All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Father's Friday. I'm your host, Brian Anderson, and I am very excited for this week. We have Christopher Veal. He is a dear friend that I've never met in person, just online, like so many great people in the world. He is a executive coach. He's a dad. He is an author of the book I have behind me, and he's got just so discreetly over his shoulder.
It's
Uh,
subtle as an
oh, man.
avalanche.
Yeah. But his focus, much like many of our guests, is focusing on like how do men show up? How do dads show up and stay connected in all the ways that we are involved, whether that's in the workplace or at home with our families. And so, Chris, thanks for being with us today.
Happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation, Brian.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of hats, like I mentioned,
hmm
got a long career. So how does fatherhood fit into all that? Where's the passion for fatherhood show up for you?
Sure. I think the thing I would say is it's the core in everything. So all of the decisions I make when I looked at shifting careers and doing the work that I do, I always looked at it through the lens of how does it impact the way I show up as a father, and will it get in the way of it? Because for me, being a dad is the most important role I will ever have. And I actually left a job in the past because it was impacting on my ability to be there for my daughter. And so for me, that's just it's the core of everything. And it's really how I hold as the anchor.
And how old is your daughter now?
She will be 15 just
Okay.
around the corner. So I don't know when this is going to air, but actually next week on the 10th of July. So maybe it's in the past when people see this. But
Yeah.
yes, early July will be her 15th birthday. So we're getting ready to celebrate that. And we're actually going to Disneyland the next day.
Ah, very fun birthday, I'm sure. So
Yes.
you've had 15 years then to kind of like get used to this, even though I'm sure it changes every 10 seconds. Um,
Yes.
what when you like are doing your executive coaching, right? Because I imagine a lot of the folks that you're working with are parents in some capacity.
Mhm.
How do you bring that dad first mentality into an executive coaching space?
Oh, I like that question. I think what I'd say is it's really about how I show up. And a lot of what I do is I have some knowledge. I've spent more than 25 years doing leadership development. But I don't come from a place first of let me tell you the answers. A lot of the work that I do is helping the leaders I work with figure out what are the answers they have because they are much more capable than sometimes they give themselves credit for, or they're so close to the problem that they can't step back and see. And so the way I bring that dad energy is, really that supportive, encouraging space, maybe challenging them a little bit to step outside of their comfort zones, and ultimately knowing that if they stumble, I'm going to be there to help support them, but trusting that they are going to find their own answers. And that's a lot of what I bring.
Hmm. Sounds like a lot of what we do as dads,
A little bit, yeah.
a
Yeah,
little
it
bit.
turns out.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that like apparent for a lot of the folks you're working with, or do you have to kind of be more explicit?
It depends, I think one of the things when I'm talking with clients for the first time and we're starting to work together is I say, "I'm more committed to your growth than I am to your comfort." And for the people that has them kind of go, "Ooh," a little bit scared, but also a little bit excited, that's a good thing because that means then that they're ready to step into that place of change. And I think that's part of what we do as parents as well. How do we help our kids be safe? Because that's a priority, but also know that we've got to prepare them for the world. And so I don't overtly bring that, but it's just in the way that I'm being. And some people really ask for more of it, and some people just appreciate it for what it is. So I don't know if I answered the question or not. I probably danced around it.
That's right, but that's the best way to answer some of these questions. So we'll make it work. Um, would you say like dads are more res receptive, or moms in that kind of executive approach you
It
bring?
Yeah, the answer is it depends.
Okay.
I think it's largely the individual and their willingness and readiness for change. That's what's going to be the biggest dictator. I can't say as I think back whether it's been more moms or dads. And often when we bring in examples of how they're showing up as parents, that helps them see some of the challenges they're facing in different ways too. So it largely depends on the individual, and most people are open to it. When they're looking at working with a coach, they're ready to make a change. Whatever they've been doing isn't working for them, and they're open to trying something new. Or it could be that they know things are going well, and how do they leverage that and build upon that too?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's all about that mindset, right? How we
Absolutely.
for space. I love that. So for yourself then, like when you're coaching your daughter, we'll call it coaching your daughter. How does she respond to this kind of like you have the answers in you, like let me help you find them.
Yeah. One distinction I make is I don't coach her because you never
Good.
coach anyone who hasn't explicitly agreed to be coached.
Yep.
And I use some of my coaching skills. So the two primary areas I think where it's made a biggest difference is I listen differently to my daughter in the conversations we have. Whereas sometimes I do. I have to put on the dad hat, and there's times where I say, this is what's going to happen. More often, I try to come from a place of how can I listen and hear her in a different way so that she feels seen and heard and valued. And the other thing is there's a concept in the coaching framework that I was taught called designing an alliance. And it's really about how do we want to work together and partner in whatever we're trying to accomplish. And so we've had conversations around that. Yes, she's got a list of chores that she does for her allowance and things, but I also want to enroll her in how does she want to be a partner with me in supporting and taking care of our house? Because what I want to do is help her instill and learn some responsibility as well. And so those are two of the areas I think where sometimes parents may not. They may just say, here's the things you need to do. And I try and find opportunities where I can help her find her own voice and be able to ask for what she wants and needs, knowing that sometimes the answer will be yes and sometimes the answer will be no. But either way, I'm going to explain the reasoning behind it too.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, just recently I was listening to a podcast where they said, when you frame chores and the household responsibilities as like, hey, if you help me, I can play this game with you. If you
Hmm.
don't help me, I'm going to be doing the chores while you're sitting by yourself waiting for me to play with
Right.
you. And I
Yeah.
kind of started spinning that on my kids too, to say like, I could use your help clearing the table so that we can now play a game after dinner. And it's
Right.
amazing how quickly they move.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I even use language sometimes of like, hey, I need your help in helping me take care of our house, our home.
yeah.
Right. So it's almost her taking some ownership in it as well, not just, hey, it's stuff dad's got to do. And sometimes she sees the value of, oh, when she steps up and helps with that, we've got time to do other things too. So absolutely. There's just different ways to get to it.
Yeah. Yeah. My most recent mistake as a dad turned into a win because I screwed up my daughter's breakfast, or not breakfast,
Okay.
her lunch. Like she was eating breakfast, I was getting lunches ready for camp. And she's like, Dad, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm getting your lunch, doing everything I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be doing. She's like, you're doing it wrong. And I was like, well, you can do it. And she was like, I am gonna do it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna
Nicely done. There you go.
yeah, and I was generally trying to be a good dad. I wasn't like,
Right.
covertly screwing everything up.
Right.
And it worked, it worked itself out.
Well, here's what I love in that is that she was willing to say, Dad, you're doing it wrong. You were open to hearing it instead of like, no, some parents would be like, no, I'm doing it right. You were like, okay, you want to do it? And she was like, yeah. And now she's more empowered. The next time she's probably just going to step up and do it.
Yeah. So for those
Nice.
parents that are, thank you. Yeah, I'm perfect.
You are clearly, you've got it all together.
Clearly, clearly I have it all figured out. So for those parents and those dads who might be listening that are still kind of stuck in old frameworks or like, I'm the authority here, like it's my house, it's my rules. If you don't agree, leave. Like we've all
Mhm.
heard those TV shows and old
Right.
narratives that I feel like most people have kind of shifted away from that kind of mindset, but we're still out there. And in
Hmm.
my bad moments, I still go there at times. Like
Right.
we all do have to at times, but I'm just curious, like, are there strategies you've done or that you've seen in your coaching that have helped parents make that shift easily, or at least easier than it might feel like, oh, but that's too much work, or I
Right.
can't go
I
back.
think there's a couple elements. So the first thing is, I will say there are times that as parents, we do need to go to that authoritarian place and say, I'm the parent, here's what needs to happen. Absolutely. And if that's the only way you can operate, that's probably not going to serve you well in the long run. For the ones that are thinking about how do I shift, I think there's a couple ways I look at it. First of all, having an awareness of how much you're doing it is a big first step because if you don't recognize you're going to it, it's hard to notice the behavior to change it. I would say find an ally. So whether it's your partner, your spouse, it could even be your kids and saying, hey, I'm trying to be a little bit different as I'm parenting. Can you help me? Maybe give me feedback or show me examples of where you see that I do it or don't. This is going to be maybe a really bad analogy, but it's kind of like training a dog. But reinforce the behaviors you want to see, right? And we may not see it in ourselves, but when somebody says, "Hey, I saw you do that thing you're trying to do," that helps reinforce it for us. And I think the other thing I would say is find other people that are doing it and lean into them. I'm a big believer in community and connecting with other parents that are either working on similar things can be a great way to also help you feel motivated. And the last thing I think I'll say about it is be like have some grace for yourself. If you're trying to change a behavior, you've probably been doing it for a while and it won't change overnight. Anybody who tells you that it will, or they have a 3-step process that'll have it fixed immediately, they're selling you something, probably don't believe it. But give yourself time and grace, and there's going to be days where you get it right, and days where you don't. And the days where you get it wrong, Again, that doesn't mean it wipes out everything you've done, but recognize, okay, I didn't quite have the impact I wanted. How do I do better the next time? I think those are some of the places I'd point.
Those are awesome. And I would say, I've followed those steps and I have my bad moments, right? And
Hmm.
depending on the age of your child, they can
Right.
appreciate the mistake, right?
Right.
And frame that as like, oh, dad's trying his best. I screwed up
Yeah.
today, right?
Yeah.
Or hey, you screwed up yesterday, or even better, hey, I screwed up. I'm gonna put myself in timeout and
Yeah.
recharge and regulate.
That's really important. I think like being willing to say to our kids, you know what? I missed the mark. I didn't do as well as I could have, and I'm going to do better. Models for them that they don't have to get it perfect and that they can make mistakes. And they know when we don't get it right. So just acting like, no, 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 it's all perfect, like that's not serving either. So being willing to own it because it shows them that you can be human, you don't have to be perfect, and it gives them permission to try as well.
I love it. Yeah. My daughter the other day said practice makes better. And
Hmm.
I was just like, where did she hear that? I love it because,
Yep.
I was raised on practice makes perfect, and that's
Yep.
just
Yep.
impossible to live up to. So,
I often use the term progress, not perfection,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Similar thing. Yeah.
process. Yep. Well, before we get to your amazing dad jokes, I know you've got you can weave in as many as you want in this next segment. But we've talked a lot about the like how you've coached others or how you've seen others, put things into practice and stuff. But is there like a fun anecdote of a win with your daughter, besides the one you shared about the Our House, but like a recent
Mm.
where you're like, I did fatherhood really well today. That you went,
There's probably a few, and it's like, so I'm resisting the urge to go like, I got to get the best one.
yeah.
But here's one that I think I celebrated. So one of the things that I'm a big believer in is I want to expose my daughter to a variety of experiences and things in life. And not too long ago, she came and she told me she was talking with some friends about music. And we all know kids listen to different music, much like our parents probably thought about us. But they were trying to stump each other with song lyrics, and she pulled stuff out like from the Eagles and like all kinds of like stuff that I've been introducing her to, and her friends had no idea. And I'm like, yes, like that's a dad win. My kid has more of a musical like repertoire than just what's on the radio now. So I was like, okay, I'll take that for the win. That she, there's stuff she'll sometimes start quoting songs to me, and I'm like, yay, but like, how did you do that, kiddo? So I love that she's open to experiencing a lot of different music beyond just what her friends are listening to. So I'm going to take that as a dad win.
I would take that as a huge dad win. And for a while, my girls loved listening to the Cranberries, and I was like, awesome, yes,
Yeah.
we have some shared interests. But of course,
Yep.
it's all Taylor Swift these days, and
I know.
I will admit, I only knew her hits, and as I've listened to some of the deeper, B-sides of her albums, there's some good stuff there. So I'm
Okay.
not a Swiftie to that
You
extreme, but
you
I
you are a better man than me because I can't get into Tay Tay. Isn't that it? There's whatever everyone calls her the nickname. I don't know, but I haven't gotten into Taylor Swift's library. But big props to you, my man.
hey,
You do what you do for your kids.
baby steps
Yep.
to grow. Hey, if we want them to expand their horizons,
That's true. That's
gotta
true.
meet them a little
That's
bit.
true. That's true.
Anyway, well, before we head into our weekend, let's hear your dad jokes for all of us to
Okay.
on.
All right. So, what is a pirate's favorite letter?
I don't know. What is a
Come
pirate?
on. What would you probably say?
R, of course.
You'd think it'd be R, but a pirate's first love will always be the sea. And so here's my ask.
Oh,
When you tell it, because some of you that are
okay.
watching this are going to retell it, you have to do the pirate voice when you tell the last part of the joke. That's my only request.
Dude, that was great. That was a nice like you hooked me in one way and
Yeah.
brought it back around. I love it.
You
Yeah.
kind of avoided giving me the R, which is what everybody usually says, but I had to get it. So I was patient. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good. That was good. Well, Christopher, thank you for that wisdom, both in the joke and in life lessons that you've picked up and work in your executive coaching, but also in your dad career. And for all those listening, thank you for tuning in, listening to some wisdom from Christopher. And if you're listening and want to work with Christopher, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, people are curious about the book. Wholemanjourney.com is the best place to look. And then for my work with my coaching, it's echelon-left.com. That's echelon-left.
We'll include those links for easy
Yep.
access.
Yep.
So,
And they can always find me on LinkedIn as well. And you'll know
yeah,
it's the right me because it's got Vulnerability Vanguard in there.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you again for everyone listening, for Christopher for joining us. And until next week, enjoy your weekend and enjoy the dad joke, and we'll see you next time. Bye,
Thanks for
everyone.
having me.